having a lot of fun right now, I gotta admit.
What's up, my wizards? It's Dev from MTG. We got decks. Today's no different. Here's something from the modern format. I know a lot of people ask for this all the time, so I'm bringing you a thing. And of course, if I'm bringing you a modern deck, it's got to be something hilarious. It's not very expensive, and it's a blast to play. Today is Mono Blue Turns, they're calling it. Before I tell you about the cards in the deck, let me just point out, there's no crazy combo here. There's no insane synergy. There's no do this so we can set this up, which allows us to do that. It's not like that. We're just very, very straightforward. Playing a bunch of cards in the deck that help us take an extra turn. That's super awesome. And we're playing some backup for that in the form of counter spells and, advantage so that we can draw more cards than our opponent. But really, we're not doing anything incredibly special here. Let's take a look. Well, 12 copies of cards in the deck that take extra turns for us. 4 different cards in all. 12 copies of them. We've got 4 copies of Time Warp, 4 copies of Temporal Mastery, 2 copies of Walk the Aeons, and 2 copies of Part the Water Veil. So far, this is what people are doing. I could definitely see doing a one of Temporal Trespass and maybe taking out one of the Masteries. That I could understand doing that, just because we can easily delve away at least one Trespass without having to worry about it. But this is what we're doing for right now. Time Warp I don't have to talk about too much, just the cheapest way that we can take an extra turn. It doesn't have to do anything else, that's totally fine. Temporal Mastery is technically the cheapest way we can take an extra turn, but we're drawing a lot of cards in our turn, but we don't mind casting this for the full casting cost, to be honest with you. When we can get it for Miracle, that's insane, but we don't mind casting it for its full casting cost. 2 copies of Walk the Aeons. This thing is ridiculously important because we can buy it back. In the later game when we're trying to set up multiple turns, that is incredibly important. And Walk the Aeons, once you sort of hit critical mass, you can play 3 of these, buy it back twice, and you're still totally fine. Especially considering once you're set up, you don't need that many lands anymore. You just need the lands so you can play more, take an extra turn spells, And then Part the Water Veil, one of the most important cards in the deck. Some people will play 3 copies of Walk and then 1 copy of Part the Water Veil, but some people are already talking about, fudging the numbers to look more like this. So I've gone ahead and done that, and I have, in the games I've shuffled up with it, I've enjoyed that an awful lot. Part the Water Veil is a win condition, sort of the win condition in the deck, and considering it exiles, you really want to have more than one shot at getting that creature, Just really, really super duper important that we get the creature out of it, otherwise we have a couple of other ways of winning, but not super reliably or anything. Now, to get to a point in the game where we can start taking extra turns over and over, and again, it's not infinite, there's no combo, there's no super loop or anything. We just sort of play spells every turn that let us take an extra turn, But to get to that point of the game, we have to cover the early game. We do that with counters. We also do that by drawing more cards in our opponent, but let's talk about the counter spells first. We're playing 2 copies of Spell Snare, then 4 copies of Remand. Don't have to explain Spell Snare too much, and I could talk about Spell Snare all day, but we all understand why this is a very, very important counterspell in Magic, period, and not just Modern. And then 4 copies of Remand because it's even more disgusting than it usually is. Some players look at Remand and they don't get it, But Remand, basically, in the early game, if they've spent all their mana on said spell, says take an extra turn. It just ends their turn, more or less, and you get to draw a card, too. So it's just, Remand is crazy. It's sort of like an honorary time walk effect in some ways. In this deck, if you counter their spell, not only do you get to draw the card, but usually the argument against Remand is like, they're just going to play the stupid thing next turn, forgetting that Magic is a game of turns, and you put them way off tempo. But anyway, the argument is usually they'll just play it again next turn, but their next turn might be 3 or 4 turns away for them. So Remand is even more disgusting than it normally is, which is really saying something. We've got 3 copies of Cryptic Command in the deck, which also counters spells, but it also draws cards, so I felt like it was a good segue, a good bridge between the counters and the advantage. Obviously, it does even more than that. Bounces big threats, Just really, really important card in Modern, period, I feel like I don't have to explain it too much. Not only does it do the things that we need it to do, but we're a mono blue deck in Modern. So let's play Cryptic Command, probably the most expensive card in the deck, I think. Here's some stuff that draws us cards, quote-unquote. 4 copies of Serum Visions and 3 copies of Telling Time, which doesn't technically draw us cards, but whatever, who cares. Love the filtering on Telling Time, and I'd play it over Anticipate in the deck, mostly because, if there are 2 of those 3 cards that we're looking at are good, we get to keep not just 1, but 2 of the good cards. That's important, Telling Time, super awesome, and Serum Visions I don't have to explain either. I could see the deck playing Thought Scour, but I'm not really sure. What we do want to do a lot of the time is be able to counterspell and have mana open to draw cards. But obviously we couldn't do that with Thought Scour. We can't do it with Serum Visions. We can do it with Telling Time, which is why it's in the deck. But I'd love to have just one mana draw card effect in the deck. It feels like it needs that over Telling Time. Telling Time, really one of the weaker cards in the deck at first glance, but just it's obviously very important for what the deck does. 4 copies of Dictative Crewfix, which obviously also draws this card, but it's so important to the deck that I wanted to talk about it by itself. It may be one of the most important cards in the entire deck. You play this at the end of your opponent's turn, you go ahead and start drawing your 2 cards first. That's great compared to something like Howling Mind, which people are, in fact, talking about adding a 1 or 2 of Howling Mind to the deck, which I could get behind. But Dictate is more important. You get to draw your cards first. Not only that, but they might not get to utilize Dictative Crewfix until 2 or 3 turns later when you finally say go, it's your turn. So Dictate is just amazing. Really doesn't guarantee, but really helps make sure that we get something every turn that allows us to take an extra turn. The rest of the cards I'm going to talk about in the main deck are all like weird, like they serve a very niche purpose for the deck, but they're very important too. Starting with 1 copy of Elixir of Immortality here, which does exactly what it looks like it does. You know, shuffles your library, shuffles your graveyard back into your library. Any, you know, take an extra turn spells that don't exile on resolution are going to go back in there, allowing you to draw more of them as you go on. By then, you'll be set up with Dictative Crewfix, another couple of cards that help us draw things too. So maybe even 2 dictates. So once you're able to shuffle those things back in, it's a huge windfall for you. And the 5 life does in fact help against some decks, you know, especially heavy aggro and stuff. So I think the card definitely warrants the 1 of, but I wouldn't put any more in than that. The deck sees an awful lot of its cards, especially if it's running correctly. So once you start running right, you only need 1 or 2 of the cards that either help you win the game or things like this that are just so utility and so perfect for what the deck does that you really have to play at least the 1 of. But again, we don't have to play too many copies of these because we will be seeing them if we get set up. 2 copies of like the weirdest looking card in the deck. This is Gigadrouse. Obviously in the early game this will tap down creatures, not allowing them to attack us, but once we give up a turn loop, we take 3 or 4 turns, they're just going to be trying to attack us for damage 9 times out of 10 once they're able to go. You know, they get a little bit of damage in. Well, we are able to Gigadrouse their creatures down for just that 1 turn, and then next turn, hopefully, start taking more turns. You know, just Gigadrouse really mitigates the damage from having to say go to them, and so it's a very, very important card in the deck. Not only that, but Part the Water Veil. Once you're able to awaken that, it's entirely likely, again, they have a bunch of creatures out, and you might not be able to take the necessary extra turns to burn through all their creatures and attack for the necessary lethal damage with Part the Water Veil, you know, with the awakened land at least. But with Gigadrouse, you can tap down their creatures during your turn and then start taking, well, you know, at the end of their turn even, start taking extra turns, and at that point, all their guys are tapped. Your Part the Water Veil awakened land can just get through for damage without having to care about the 6 creatures they're playing, you know. So Gigadrouse, so versatile, does so many things for the deck that I could definitely see playing at least 1 extra copy. But the extra 2 copies of it are in the board already. 1 copy of Thassa in the main deck, which is a win condition if you have more than 1 Dictate out. This is instantly turned on and can swing 3 for damage. She can be unblockable. That's really cool. The Scry is one of the main attractions on this card too, by the way. The Scrying every turn, especially when you're taking extra turns, fix your draws, allow your Dictative Crewfix to do its work, you know, do its job, and draw you the cards that you need to draw. Just that Scry 1 every turn is absolutely crazy, especially when you're taking a lot of extra turns in a row. But not only is she a win condition, she allows you to cycle through cards, make sure, you know, Part the Water Veil, awaken land, unblockable. So just the 1 copy of Thassa will almost always win you the game when it comes down. And finally in the main here, 1 copy of Jace Beleren. Yeah, just when you're taking a bunch of extra turns, your Planeswalkers tend to get a ton of loyalty. And again, you notice the 1 copy of Thassa, the 1 copy of Jace. Once we get set up, we're seeing enough of our cards that we can reliably draw some sort of win condition. So don't sweat it too much. The Jace Beleren, once we can get his ultimate off, it's more or less guaranteed that we can win the game. You know, just I'd like to play at least 1 more Planeswalker in the deck, just on the principle that if we're taking a bunch of extra turns, our Planeswalkers' loyalties are going to get out of control. I mean, I could definitely see playing more than 1. Some people are saying perhaps add Narset to the deck by splashing white, but we'll have to see about that. I'm not really sure how I feel about it, although it seems pretty good. But in any case, right now Jace Beleren is a win condition for us, where Narset wouldn't necessarily be. Nothing she does wins you the game. It's just insane advantage, you know. But Jace Beleren can win us a game. It's very, very important. We're going to play at least the 1 copy. 23 lands in the deck, and I know what you're thinking. That doesn't seem like very many lands, especially in a mono blue deck. You know, we're used to decks with blue in them having 26, 27, 28 lands, you know. But this deck, you don't really need it. You know, you need the 5 mana to get to, say, a Time Warp, or sometimes you'll be able to Miracle the Temporal Mastery. That happens kind of often in the early games. We're playing 4 copies. So we've got to get to the point where we're able to cast more, you know, take an extra turn spells. I get that. But once we're able to do it, we're super set up. We're going to be drawing lands all the time because we're taking extra turns. We're going to be dropping dictates, we're going to be dropping chases and drawing a bunch of extra cards. So we're able to get these lands very, very easily, and you don't want to run into too many of them while you're trying to continue your take extra turn loop. So 23 lands is pretty much exactly right, I think. And here's the sideboard. We're just trying to cover the very, very early game with this sideboard, you know. Hurkyl's Recall against Affinity. We've got Spell Pierce against like everything that plays small creatures. Spell Pierce could almost be in the main deck. Swan Song against small creature or small decks basically. And Swan Song, by the way, can be put in against certain decks, control and the like, to counter one of your own spells during your turn loops, and then just like swing in for 2 damage every turn. You know, sometimes in the right turn loop you can deal 6 to 8 damage with a Swan Song token, you know, so that's fairly a versatile card. But mostly, again, we're just trying to cover the early game. That's where we have the most trouble. And here are your power rankings, I guess. I mean, it doesn't really work to score the deck by traditional, you know, methods or anything. It doesn't seem like it's really good at much, but that's because the deck is so different. It doesn't attack for damage, it doesn't have much offense or really defense. It's really only worried about taking extra turns and eventually finding a win condition. I mean, you can't score by traditional means. You really just can't. I mean, the final score for what it's worth is a 49, but don't let it fool you. The deck is just so different and plays way different than your average deck that scoring it this way means almost nothing. What are we doing next time? We're going back to standard, of course, for Boros Midrange, a deck that I think is actually really good. We've got a lot of options, turns 3 through 5 in that deck. So, been testing it out, and it's looking really good right now. So that's what we're doing next time. Boros Midrange, red-white midrange. Well, if you enjoyed the content, do me a solid like, share, comment, and I think it's about time to subscribe if you haven't done that yet. I'm Dev from the place. What is this that I'm doing? I'm doing the SpongeBob Imagination from SBMTG. I'll see you guys later. Thanks for watching, my wizards.